Hello guys, this is NJ from the MBTI tier lists. Welcome to yet another mother of a tier lists. In today's episode, we will be contemplating on the question of which would make for the best psychiatric nurse. Now, as a little preface, I have actually worked in the psychiatric ward myself as a caretaker and in psychiatric like mental rehabilitation center and so on. So I actually have personal experience about working in the industry and in the fields. So I have actually got to see many different types as these caretakers and nurses at the job. So I have a pretty good picture about this. So yeah, and I don't some types are kind of surprising, how well they actually tend to do in the psychiatric fields, and I'm going to be explaining all of this. If you are interested in being a nurse or choosing your specialty as a nurse, check my other nurse videos. I have made a lot of them for all the different specialties. The psychiatric field is a really specific kind of a field. It's completely different from all the other nursing specialties. And for us to define which would be the best type, we have to first determine which would be the best functions for psychiatry. Basically, let's start with the feeling functions. I mean, they are the obvious winner here. You know, you're dealing with people and you're not doing anything with your hands. You know, you do very little with your hands. So it's it's all emotional intelligence, social skills. You know, it's all about interacting with people, and so on. Now there is an element of you have to be able to be an authority. You know, there's violent people, and you have to be kind of be able to put people in check and kind of handle situations. So I do not SE and TE, for example. I always said SE and TE are almost the alpha male functions, so to speak. So I do SE and TE, you actually get something out of them for the psychiatric field. NE as well, because NE is an interactionary function, so you actually get social skills out of NE. And I would say that SE also gives you interactionary capabilities. These are really interactive functions. Any NE and SE user will generally interacting with people, and they will be great interactioners as well. So it is not as simple to say as that feeling functions, are just better and you don't need these other functions for anything, because you do get something else from these functions than just what they were made out to be. Like NE, for example, yeah, it's a brains function. SE is the action man function, but I said, these are also interaction functions. Good at interacting with people. And TE, yeah, it's a logical function. Yeah, it's an executional function. Yeah, maybe you don't execute that much in the psychiatric ward, but it's also an alpha male function. So it's good at keeping order and being the police and the security guards, and so on. SI, on the other hand, it's good at keeping everything organized, and SI also gives you that kind of sensitivity to people especially when you combine it with the F functions. It gives you this capability of taking care of a person's physical needs and understanding their personal preferences and so on. NI, super powerful function for understanding people. NI users, even NI users who have no feeling functions, tend to derive some capability of understanding people out of their NI. TI is probably the only function where you basically wouldn't be getting much out of it, Of course, like maybe you can use TI a little bit to understand people, but like not really. You know, TI doesn't like really do justice for emotions and people as people and so on. So I like TI would be kind of like the function that you get like the least like out of, so to speak. I would actually hold like NE like as an S tier function simply because like, you know, it is such an insanely good interactionary function. Plus, it helps you also to understand people and so on. And you know, like the question of like, you know, which would be better, like an extrovert or an introvert as a psychiatric nurse is debatable. But I actually do think that like maybe NE would be even like better than FI, for example, like as a standalone function. You know, like I do like NE users, like using NE, like it's just like you can read people, you can understand them, like, okay, maybe if you have no feeling function at all, then it's not like that and so on. But yeah, you know, like being a psychiatric nurse, it's not just about like sitting down and talking with a guy. You know, many times like schizophrenics get violent. And then you have to like, you know, handle the situation. You have to like something like even like wrestle with them and like, you know, needle them up the ass and you know, like restrain them, you know, lock them in a room. And like TE and SE would be basically some of the best functions for that shit. Like if it gets like up to violence, you know, of course, like the main goal of these circumstances is to try to de-escalate with your emotional and social intelligence. You know, intuitive functions would be also kind of good at like, you know, like peering into the soul of the person who's about to snap and figuring out like exactly what you're supposed to say to de-escalate the situation. And so on. But once again, like if violence is imminent and nobody has been able to de-escalate, well, then you have to wrestle, man. And you know, in the psychiatric hospital where I worked, there was a rule that like in every single ward, there had to be at the least like one man in shifts. And that was like simply so that there would be like at the least like one guy who could wrestle these psychotic maniacs. You know, and of course they're not like maniacs. There's like, you know, in a bad mental state and it's not like really their fault or anything, you know, and so on. But like, you know, like the psychiatric hospital has an element of you kind of like being a security guard and a bouncer as well. And SE and TE users, like, I mean, they are the best guys for that circumstance, like when it has escalated to a point of violence, you know. So I like SE and TE are like, they're actually like surprisingly good functions for the, you know, psychiatric hospital as well. So like once again, it is not as simple as to say that like the feeling functions would be the greatest. I do that like extroverted feeling would be arguably the best imaginable function because once again, it gives you emotional intelligence, social intelligence, like a high level of interactionary capabilities, and a high level of like expressing your compassion for the patient in question. But FE also has like a community manager, you know, mentality going on. That the FE users are also pretty good at like taking command over social circumstances. And once again, I actually think like FE would also be pretty good like function like in a violent circumstance in like doing the interaction with the person while you are wrestling with the guy. FI on the other hand, I mean it gives you that like super deep emotional intelligence and compassion. In certain cases, I didn't like the FI style silent, you know, like blue state compassion, like in certain cases is better. Like FE users can be sometimes a little bit overbearing. Sometimes schizophrenics are in like a really like a sensitive state. And I don't like FI users have that like next level of sensitivity that they know how to just like be with a person and let the guy be what they are. without having any opinions about the matter, just like accepting the other person as totally as possible. So I do like FI is just like also like a really like strong function for the psychiatric wards or for some like mental rehabilitation center and so on. And sometimes like silence, it's just like it's golden. Sometimes, people with mental problems are so confused that you just like have to give them some time. And FI is really good at like giving that like space for the other person's emotions and existence and kind of like fine tuning their own behavior to such like insane sensitivity and nuance that I like FE is necessarily capable for. In certain ways, like you could make the argument that like FI would be even better than FE. Probably for the most circumstances, FE would be better, and so on. Like SI would probably be the worst of these functions, basically. Like you do have to run a lot of like daily menial stuff, take care of like food and clothes and schedules and be like an organizational guy as well in these places for which SI would be the best. TE would also be really good. But that is not the most important stuff, and it's at the level where basically anybody could do all the basic daily stuff and so on. So I like NI would be kind of like the best of the 8 here because it gives you that like, psychotherapist intuition about people, and so it would be super powerful. I like NE would be even better for this circumstance simply because NE once again gives you the interactionary capabilities to go with it, and has better like observational skills. Like at the psychiatric ward, like you really need like to be observant. Like you need to be like monitoring people. Like most of the time, what you're doing is like you're living among the crazies, so to speak, and you have to be like we're like paying attention to like what is going on, like where did that guy go and why, and kind of like be alert and kind of ready to go, so to speak. Although of course most of the time it's pretty peaceful and so on. And so maybe you could make the argument like NI would be S tier basically, like you just derive so much benefit from having that like intuitive insight about people with the NI, and it's kind of like it's a little bit deeper once again than the NE. Like NE is a little bit superficial in their intuitions, and so on. So I like maybe like NI would be basically S tier. You could make the argument for the SE as well. SE people are also really good at like sizing up people and kind of like reading people, and also like really great just like interaction nurse, So I like SE and then handling all of those like actually radical circumstances. SE users would be the best at it. So I like SE is actually SE users are super observant. They don't miss anything. So I like SE would actually be S tier. I like these would be the best functions for the psychiatric wards. But yeah, like the real magic starts coming in when you start combining these functions. So, okay guys, let's get into it. Okay guys, so here we have the types. So let's start with the NFs. Okay, so let's start with the ENFJ. Now, like what can you say? These guys are leading with arguably the best function for the psychiatric field, FE. Secondary feeling NI, which gives them this super deep and complex understanding of the person's existence with the NI and intuitive insight. Tertiary SE gives them more observational skills and more command over the physical circumstance. ENFJs with their tertiary SE can have like surprisingly like menacing physical presence if they have to do it. Like they can like project this like physical authority over circumstances and people a little bit. So ENFJs would kind of like they would have like a little bit of capability in like handling those like violent circumstances as well. And that like FE-SE combo for like interaction is some of the most like, ENFJs are the greatest interactioner in the system. ENFJs are like super like quick interactioners. Like I used to date and live with an ENFJ and like I'm not entirely sure like the only people who are at the level as interactioners with ENFJs are basically the ENFPs. ENFJs have these like super like mega quick brains for interaction, like social interaction. Like they can like you can like bombard an ENFJ with like 10 different social cues and emotions and signals in like 1 second, and they're gonna be able to react and process to all of that. Like ENFJs are just like the maniacs of interaction. And they're the most talented with people. ENFJs arguably have the highest social skills in the entire system. And with that secondary NI, man, like ENFJs, they can peer into the soul of a person. And with the NI, like NI is a bit of a slow function, but in the hands of an ENFJ, it becomes snap quick. That like FE NI combo, starting with the FE, it's like the NI is actually working like, as the worker of the FE, so it's like the ENFJ like uses the NI for the purposes of the FE for the most part. And for that reason, it just becomes a little bit quicker. Like when you're using FE as an ENFJ, like you're just like coming to the NI to like check some things, and it just gives you that intuitive insight and so on, while you're like being hyper extrovert, like FE-SE going on. So I mean, like, yeah. And ENFJs, like, you sit down with them and they're the greatest psychotherapists. Like ENFJs are the kind of a person that like, they don't even have to go through any like psychotherapy training to be somebody's personal psychotherapists. They're the greatest community managers, and they really care about people. They're genuinely interested about people. They want to sit down with you and talk with you and understand you and take care of you and so on. There's no way around. Like ENFJ would be like an unquestionable, undeniable S-tier psychiatric nurse. I would say that like probably at the top of the S-tier, there's no way around it. They have like everything going on for themselves, and ENFJs even that have that like extroverted thing going on where they can actually even like take command over circumstances, which is actually sometimes needed, in the psychiatric field. So like ENFJs, they would like be the perfect package. Like they could do like everything. They like ENFJs basically have no weakness whatsoever for this job. They're just like the super person for everything, in these fields, okay? So what about the ENFJ? Leading with NE, super high interactionary capabilities. Like ENFPs are the other like hyper interactioner of the system next to the ENFJs. Secondary FI, so ENFPs have this super deep like sensitivity and emotional intelligence about people. The ENFPs are sometimes a little bit too extroverted, a little bit too kind of like, kind of hazardous and kind of like ADHD. I'm not sure. Like sometimes for like if like a schizophrenic is in like a really sensitive state, it is like ENFP hyper extroverted ADHD state might not be the best. Like ENFJs can be a little bit more collected and calm. ENFPs many times it's almost like they don't have like any other gear except like going all out at all times. So I like, that would be like a little bit, like maybe not the best of the best, but the tertiary TE, once again, like ENFPs are also relatively good at like taking command over circumstances. They might not be as like, authoritative as the ENFJs, but I like ENFPs, they're extroverts, and the like TE tertiary, like it does give them some like, bouncer capabilities as well, like a little bit, not like massively or anything, but they tend to be confident, and they became like they're like unfazed by circumstance and so on. So yeah, they would do really well. I like an ENFP would also be like an unquestionable like S tier type. there's just no way around it. Like ENFPs have the greatest capability in like reading people and understanding, crazy people and so on. They have that insane sensitivity going on and so on. But I really like that ADHD thing going on with ENFPs wouldn't make them like at the top of the S tier. I that they would definitely be just like a little bit lower than the ENFJ. But yeah, once again, this would be like close to no weakness for the job, just like a perfect psychiatric nurse. If you're like an ENFP, just and interested about it, like go for it. You would be the greatest. Just like that. Remember that like with certain like schizophrenics and so on, just like take it easy, man. Just like shut the fuck up and try to downgrade. Try to take down that like super extrovert energy that you have going on. Just like take it easy and be calm and silent and just like observe and let things happen. But like ENFP should still be like S tier. So what about the INFJ? So INFJ is leading with NI and because they're of their secondary FE, that NI is actually focused on people. So like it is questionable if any type in the system could have like a deeper understanding about human beings in front of them, except like an INFJ. In the psychiatric wards, the good thing is that like you actually do get to spend time with people. You're not like usually in like a massive hurry, and many times patients spend like weeks, even months in the same wards. Minimum many days. So like as an INFJ, you actually do get to kind of like, let that NI contemplate on the patient in question for like a little bit longer. NI is a bit of a slow function, but NI becomes the more powerful, the more you can contemplate on the same thing over and over again. And like a psychiatric patient is something that NI could lock into and observe and contemplate for days on end. So like, NI becomes just like more powerful. The INFJ becomes more powerful than more that they get to observe and spend time with the patient. At the psychiatric field, you could actually do that. So, the tertiary TI, like you don't get much out of it. Like, I mean, it does give you some like even more analytical brains probably, and because you're leading with the NIFE, then the TI can be actually like, used for the purpose of analyzing people. So I actually think like INFJs would be like one of the rare types that could actually like derive the most benefit for, psychological analysis out of the TI, because it would be working in such like servitudes under the NIFE. So I like INFJs would be some of the greatest psychiatric nurses. The only downside with the INFJ is that like they don't have that like authoritative, bouncer shit going on. As a matter of fact, like INFJs are the very antithesis of authority. They have like an inferior SE and actually like a polar TE. So like INFJs are weak in all of the alpha male functions. You couldn't turn INFJs into an alpha even if you tried. I mean, these guys are just like, whimsy, special snowflake people. There's no way around it. Like, I don't want to be a dick or anything. It's like a joke. If you're listening to this, don't be insulted, man. I love you anyways. And so on. And like INFJs are wonderful people. And like, yeah, like maybe like in the psychiatric field that like secondary FE, even does give them some like, that they do have this like a community manager inside of them, and that would give them something for these like even like violent circumstances. But generally speaking, if violence actually erupts, you have to start wrestling and doing shit. Like INFJs, they wouldn't even believe in that shit and so on. So I like they would be not as the greatest in those circumstances. And so now that being said, like an INFJ would have to be like an unquestionable, undeniable S tier guy. And for the most part, I would actually rate them higher than the ENFP simply because of that introverted capability of like sitting down with a guy and like not having the extroverted energy. Even the ENFJ sometimes has a little bit too extrovert energy, for like super sensitive, patients. Like I have worked in the industry And you know, like when a person is just like in a state of psychosis, they're like super in like a vulnerable state, you know. And I have done it myself. Like I have sat down for hours with a guy who was just like completely like out of fucking whack, and they were so sensitive and they were so vulnerable that you like really had to have like next level, you know, compassion, and this like that you can just like be there with the guy. And the big thing when it comes to mental problems, you know, if you want to be successful in it, is like to not try anything. You know, like like, you know, like emotions are not something to be fixed. Emotions like are to be understood and accepted. And INFJs would have some of the greatest capabilities in being that fucking guy. You know, like an INFJ can sit down with you and you know, and they have that like calm introverted thing going on where they don't have to say anything, like if it's better to say nothing. You know, sometimes it's better to just let the guy be and just be there with them. And sometimes that's the most like socially and emotionally clever thing to do. And INFJs would know that. They would be able to understand that better than anybody else, except maybe, you know, the INFP. So, you know, INFJs definite like S tier. There's no way around it. Like maybe like half a point would be taken off because they're like no alphas, and sometimes you just need a fucking bouncer, man, at the psychiatric wards and so on. You know, and even in like mental rehabilitation centers, sometimes, you know, people just snap. You know, so you have to have like a little bit of a security guards, a little bit of a bouncer every now and then. So it's like, you know, like half a point off. With like the ENFJ would be above the INFJ for that particular reason alone. So what about the INFP? So INFPs leading with FI. I mean, like, you know, INFPs are arguably the most sensitive person in the entire system. Like, you know, secondary NE gives them that like interactionary capability if required, and gives them that like intuitive insight about people and the capability of like reading people and so on. Tertiary SI, like, yeah, like, you know, like that FI-SI combo, or basically like the FI-NE-SI combo, which is like a hyper, super, mega good functional stacking for being a psychiatric nurse. It's like it gives the INFP this like almost like magical capability in like reading people and reading people's state. And that, like, you know, like tertiary SI just like gives the INFP even the capability of like reading the person's like physical state, you know, and this like emotional physical state and so on. So it's like INFPs are like, you know, like it is unbelievable how sensitive INFPs are to the people around them. And INFPs have this capability, like Dario Nardi calls it like the blue state, where like an INFP sits down with you, their brains, they just shut down, man. They're like INFPs are the masters of giving you the space and just listening to you with pure compassion and letting you like take the entire space for yourself. And once again, this is an insanely important capability for the purposes of like the psychiatric circumstances. Like you really need to be able to shut the fuck up and just like listen for once. And INFPs, I mean, there is like literally no greater listener in the entire system except the INFP. I mean, that's just what it is. You know, INFPs would be like a definite S tier for a psychiatric nurse. And the other thing for all of these guys is that, like, you know, they're like intuitives and abstract and so on. Once again, like other nursing specialties are really like physical stuff. You have to execute and so on. The psychiatric field is the one place where like even the INFP like doesn't like really have much of a weakness, because you're not like expected to do anything like physical stuff, you know. So it's like, yeah, INFPs do have the same problem with that the INFJs, like they have an inferior extroverted thinking polar SE, which is they're like INFPs, you know, they're also not like an authority figure like at all, basically. and so on. But yeah, like INFPs, they have that like next level sensitivity, arguably the highest emotional intelligence in the entire system. Like INFPs have this like natural way, this natural like blue state way of just like being with a crazy person. You know, INFPs are the kind of a person, they don't even have to say anything, and you just like know that they understand human. And INFPs are the greatest in like knowing the person in their own terms. You know, like putting them into the other person's shoes, and like understanding the circumstance from the perspective of the other person, because INFPs, they accept people as who they are to such an extent, and they want you to be you to do you, and you be you, and they have that like level of compassion that is just like not seen in the system anywhere else, to be frank. I like INFPs would be above ENFPs. Here's a question for you, like, you know, this would be like an impossible question, which would be like better, like an INFP or an INFJ. They both have their own like strong strengths and so on. INFJs, they're like a little bit of a more community manager with the FE. So for that reason, maybe like the INFJs would be like a little bit above the INFPs, but I like INFPs would be actually even better in sitting down with the psychotic person who's super vulnerable, even better than the INFJs. And INFJs would be the best ever. So like that tells you something about the INFPs level of sensitivity and so on. So yeah, but maybe the FE would just take the price here like a little bit. But they're basically just like at the same level and so on. But yeah, definitely all NFs S tier, there's no way around it. I mean, these guys were born to do it and have close to no weakness for the whole thing. There's like the greatest of all time for these kind of shits. So what about the NDs? What about the ENTJs? Now, I actually I worked in this like, what they called like, I don't know how to say this in English, this like critical, like the kind of like the worst patients wards, but it was for like teenagers. So like you basically had like the worst of the worst when it comes to like mental problems as teenagers. And it wasn't just that like having the worst mental problems, but having the worst like shit going down. So like we had like patients, we had like kids who had like burned their parents or raped their, you know, little brother. And that kind of like crazy shit. There were like criminals there as well. You know, so like they were the craziest teenagers when it came to their mental state, and they were like fucking like violent, you know, completely twisted like criminals, like rapists and pyromaniacs and, you know, murderers and everybody. And they were teenagers. So, and the funniest thing was that when you would hang around with those guys, they were completely normal, man. Like it was such like an experience to be there, but like, man, did you have to have like discipline and rules. And I'm not sure if I'm the best authority myself, but upholding insane level of authority for these kids was the biggest priority, because they would be completely fucking normal. But if they would get even the slightest chance of like, you know, going off the rails, like everything would escalate like so fucking fast. So like in the ward, like it's like you just had to fucking like be able to like fucking like there were like consequences, man. Like you make one little fucking shits and we're gonna put you to check, you little shits. You know, and the discipline and authority was so strong in that wards that you didn't have to like yell at these guys or anything, because they fucking knew, because they would be like they would lose everything. Like if they would break one little fucking rule, they couldn't go outside, they couldn't use the phone, they couldn't look at the, you know, TV or anything. Like they would just instantly lose fucking everything, and the doors were locked. You couldn't fucking leave, man. And so on. But anyways, like funnily enough, there was like an ENTJ nurse there, and the funny thing is that like he was some of the best like nurses in the wards, and these fucking like pyromaniac and murderer rapists fucking kids, like they fucking loved the ENTJ, okay? So like as a functional stacking TE and inferior FI, I mean like ENTJs ultimately do have low emotional intelligence. You know, like ENTJs, when it comes to like psychological stuff and people, they're almost like deceiving because they do have that like secondary NI. So ENTJs are kind of like the main thinking type that has some like weird intuition about people still, and so on. But so like sometimes like you know you get this feeling with ENTJs like ENTJs actually like have like great capability in understanding you in a very complex manner. But then every now and then it's kind of like you know it almost becomes like revealed that they do at the end of the day still have inferior introverted feeling. Like I have known a lot of ENTJs in my life, and like I always say that like I'm somewhat like of like almost like an ENTJ magnet. So I have known ENTJs from all walks of life, and I have known ENTJs like on a personal level, at the very least like 2 or 3 cases. So and on top of that, all the acquaintances and so on. So like I have got like a lot of exposure to ENTJs, and ENTJs they're so weird how sometimes like many times they feel like you know this guy has that like NI about the people. But then every now and then you like when they say or do something, you go like, wait a minute, like this guy was completely fucking out of it, you know, and so on. So like I like ENTJs for the psychiatry is a little bit of a hit and miss. You know, ENTJs would definitely be the best bouncers and the best authorities, you know, at the wards. You know, ENTJs would be really capable of like dealing with those like violent circumstances and so on. ENTJs are some of the most like alpha type in the system, like TESE combo, and that is like the double alpha combo basically, and so on. Yeah, that NI does give them some like you know intuitive insight about people, but that introverted feeling just like makes it so that like it's sometimes kind of like a little bit off the mark, and there's no way around it. ENTJs tend to have the best capability for like emotional and people related insight when it comes to like you know strategy, when it comes to like assessing what this guy's gonna do, like if we're in a state of war and so on. Is he strong or weak, and is he like strong-minded or weak-minded? But like when it comes to like these like complex emotions where there's no like Game of Thrones going on, you know, ENTJs many times kind of like struggle in actually understanding people and their emotions for what they are, and so on. That being said, I like ENTJs do have like high social skills. That tertiary SE makes ENTJs like surprisingly interactionary when they actually hang around with people. You know, and that like TESE combo, it has its own way of like kind of like interacting with people that seems to work. You know, I don't like like people usually like ENTJs. You know, they can be kind of like relaxed enough and kind of like joyful enough, you know, and have good senses of humor and everything, that I like ENTJs for the most part get along with people and so on. And once again, I know that there's probably like examples of like ENTJs like being super like brilliant as like, you know, psychiatric nurses. Like the guy that I saw, like, you know, like he was just really good at like, you know, kind of like being friends with all of these crazy fucking like murderer kids basically, and they had such respect for this guy, you know, and so on. But I don't know if that was like the like a very like a specific circumstance, and so on. Now that being said, like I definitely don't like ENTJs would be like bad psychiatric nurses. I like ENTJs probably would get along like well enough with a crazy person, like anyways. And so on. ENTJs are simply not the best type to like sit down with and do like a deeper psychotherapy session with. Now, of course, the psychiatric ward, like you actually don't do as much like this like super deep psychotherapy shits as you might expect. But I mean that's still kind of like the capability that like would make you like S tier basically for the most part, and so on. I like ENTJs all in all would be just like a feasible psychiatric nurse. I would put them at the B tier. I'm not sure if they have like any actual like talent for that shit. They have severe weaknesses every now and then, but I like ENTJs are the kind of a type to probably get the job done, and it's like be like a feasible psychiatric nurse among others. Like B tier is like the tier where you're getting the job done, like you're not bad, you're not good, you're middle of the pack, it's okay, like if you want to do it, go for it. And ENTJ, if they got into the psychiatric field, they would have to learn to shut up and sit there and just listen to a guy and so on. But either they could do it, either they could do just like a functional job at the job. Okay, so what about the ENTP? Leading with NE, they have insane extroverted interactionary capabilities. NEFE is one of the, once again, best like interaction combos of the system. ENTPs are really high level when it comes to like interaction capabilities, almost at the level of ENFJ and ENFPs. I like ENFPs and ENFJs are even next level. There's just like insane interactioners. But ENTPs for interactionary purposes are almost like the next best thing. The secondary TI doesn't really give ENTPs practically anything for the job, like ENTPs would like really have to go with that tertiary FE if they wanted to get into the psychiatric field. Like inferior SI wouldn't matter basically at all. Like the main weakness of an ENTP at the psychiatric fields wouldn't matter. Like ENTPs wouldn't like really have like a weakness for the job like either. It's like you just wouldn't get much out of the TI. You would be going like NEFE all over the place. It's a little bit of a superficial combo when it comes to people. It's really talented with people. ENTPs are the greatest manipulators of the system, and interactioners. And ENTPs can read people like open fucking books. So all of these capabilities would just like make the ENTP just like super good, for the psychiatric fields. Now that being said, ENTPs, what they're kind of lacking, like there are ENTPs who have like stronger FE and TI, and that's what you should be like striving for as an ENTP psychiatric nurse. But the problem is that like ENTPs, they don't like really have like a depth function when it comes to people. NE and FE, they're both kind of like the superficial version of that function. Like NE is the more superficial version of intuition. FE is the more superficial like function when it comes to emotions. Like ENFJs, for example, they're leading with FE, but that NI brings the depth to the FE. And ENFPs, they're leading with like a little bit of a more superficial, like intuitive function, but the FI just makes it like super deep when it comes to people and emotions. ENTPs, NEFE combo, I mean, that is just like, it's like a little bit superficial of a combo for people for some like super deep, circumstances. ENTPs themselves are usually not that deep as people, if we're completely being fucking honest around here. So like, ENTPs with like violent people, they don't have like an alpha male function at all. Like ENTPs, probably of all of the extroverts in the system have like the least authority, over matters. ENTPs like wrestling with a guy, like I don't know, that's like a weird idea, man. Like I know that the ENTPs were the greatest like bouncer sized authorities at the warden and thing. ENTPs, they're too laissez-faire, they don't like violence, they're kind of lazy, and they don't even believe in authority themselves, and so on. Yeah, I like ENTPs would be super talented for being a psychiatric nurse. Like the question of if they would be S tier or A tier is kind of like debatable. But I don't like the NEFE combo. I mean, it would be better than most of the stuff in the entire system. That is like an ultra combo with people, emotions, and so on. So yeah, like, but then again, like if you just let that run, man, and you observe a patient with your NEFE for days, and so on. And once again, like as a psychiatric nurse, like you, at the end of the day, like you are nobody's psychotherapist either. Like people have this idea that it's some like super deep shits. Actually, like, psychiatric nurses, they don't do like the super deep shits with their patients most of the time. Like most of these, like, quote unquote psychotherapy sessions they're going to be having is like half an hour, and it's more like you're living with the patient and hanging around with them, and so on. Like, yeah, like you have like your own patients and that, like, one patient or two patients like are at your responsibility. You talk more with them and have like special personal sessions with them. And so on. I like at the end of the day, like it's really hard like not to put the ENTP to the S tier, but they would definitely have like a weakness for that shit. I that the ENTPs were like at the very bottom, like of the S tier. Like I don't know, man. This is like a really tough case. Yeah, I don't know, like ENTPs, they would get along with like schizophrenics like so well, ENTPs would be some of the greatest. Like the more crazy you would be, the better ENTP would be in the circumstance. Yeah, I just like doing like that NEFE. I mean, it is like a hyper super combo for the job. I like the ENTP would have to be at the S tier, especially because you're not like doing like years long super deep psychotherapy with these guys. It's more like, anything from a few days to a few months, and that's the shits. And I like ENTPs would be nailing that shit, but I do that they would be at the bottom of the S tier basically. But I like ENTPs could get to the lists basically. Okay, so what about the INTJ? Leading with NI, 30 FI. Once again, NI-FI combo is one of the most powerful combos in understanding people and emotions and so on. That secondary TE, like, yeah, maybe INTJs would be like a little bit like, I don't know, like INTJs, they're flimsy bastards as well. But it's a funny thing, like I like INTJs would like be like a little bit more authoritative than like an ENTP maybe. I don't know, ENTPs are super confident. I don't know, man. INTJ is gonna weak people in there. So I that the battle between the bouncer INTJ and the ENTP, and you like be at the same level at the end of the day, man. Like that secondary TE gives you that like robust, hard-grained quality to the INTJ, but I don't know. Both of these guys would like at the end of the day suck as bouncers, basically. And so on. But anyways, like if you were to get into the fields as an INTJ, you would have to have a super strong FI. The same thing with the ENTP. I don't like INTJs just like have more depth. Some like if you're like an INTJ with like really strong TE, like I actually know that you would be the best for this job. I'd like an ENTP with a strong TI would be better for psychiatry than, or psychiatric field than like INTJ with a heavy TE. Now that being said, as an INTJ, like you would either have a high level of FI or you would develop that shit to no end every day. So you would become, and you should strive to become like an NIFI, like an INTJ at the psychiatric wards and so on. And as such, once again, like your inferior SE wouldn't mean that much, and TE wouldn't get much out of it, like except like for the bouncer circumstances. But, at the end of the day, they're gonna rare or something, and so on. I like INTJs at the end of the day. I mean, there's like deeper people than ENTPs. So I like INTJs with the NIFI, which is like be better at like, being with vulnerable people and hanging around with people and like having that deep introverted shit going on. Yeah, I like INTJs would definitely make for like S tier psychiatric nurses. There's no way around it. I know that they could maybe like I mean like as a matter of fact like if you had like one of those like super mega strong FI INTJs, they might even be topping like ENFPs, to be honest. But I like your like average, run of the mill INTJ would, lose to your average run of the mill ENFP, because ENFPs were like born to do it. As INTJ, it's like it really comes down to the question of like how strong is your FI. ENFPs naturally have strong FIs. So I like INTJs would definitely be S tier, and this would be the kind of ranking that I would give them. Okay, they would go past the ENTP. So what about the INTP? Leading with TI, arguably the worst function for being a psychiatric nurse. Secondary NE, gives you some interactionary capabilities and so on, but in the case of the INTP, like not really. Like INTPs is the one type that like doesn't derive much people benefit from their NE. And that is just like because it's at the end of the day working on behalf of the TI that is completely getting everything wrong enough. They have inferior FE. INTPs are the one type, and the only type in the system that has like no emotional intelligence and no social skills either. They're like the most Asperger guy in the system. They have like nothing in their functional stacking even close to doing shit with emotions or people. INTPs, like, they just get people so off. They don't understand social circumstances or dynamics. They don't understand emotions. It's just like, INTPs is like the very antithesis of an INTP. Like the psychiatric field, it's like that's like literally people and emotions and nothing else. And that's like literally the one thing that you suck at the most as an INTP. INTP would probably be the only type where I would be going, like, I'm not sure if I would recommend you to be a psychiatric nurse, okay? There are other fields of nursing and specialties for the INTP where, surprisingly enough, like, there are certain nurse specialties where INTP would be the greatest. But I can tell you right now, like, that is not the psychiatric fields. Okay, I'm so sorry, INTPs, but that's like a D tier for you. And if I ever would know an INTP who wanted to get to the psychiatric field, I would be like, do you really want to do it? And I wouldn't recommend you do that shit, okay? I would have to be honest in this circumstance, okay? So what about the SFs? What about the ESFJs? ESFJs lead with FE, the best function for the task at hand. SI, kind of like almost like the worst function of the rest of the functions. Tertiary NE, oh my god. In the hands of an ESFJ, once again, that like SENE combo that ENTPs have, I mean, that is just like that is a really powerful combo for people. And with ESFJs, the SI actually does bring like a little bit of like depth to it, but it's more like a physical depth. Like ESFJs are the best guy, arguably, or one of the best guys in like understanding people's physical needs. To a very like specific degree. Now that being said, like, tertiary NE, like, does it give you enough intuition about people? Does it give you enough like complex understanding about the person's emotions and personality and so on? I have to say that I know that like ESFJs could compete with the NFs, when it comes to this like super deep peering into one's soul, understanding the complexities of one's psychology. I like ESFJs could compete with that shit. Now, that being said, once again, in the psychiatric wards and the psychiatric hospital, like, you are not being the psychotherapists. Like, for the most part, like, you are running the daily life of crazy people and people who are depressed and who are in a really bad condition and bad mental state and so on. So, we're like, as a psychotherapist, like, I think like all of these guys would be beating the ESFJ. As a psychiatric nurse, like, I'm thinking that's probably like maybe like the kind of a level of like intuitive insight that would be required that the ESFJ would actually like do it at the S tier. That like, kind of like the ENTPs as well. That like FEN, it is a bit of a superficial thing, like you know, ESFJs, like it's a stupid thing, but I actually did like ENTPs probably can read people's psychology like a little bit deeper and more intuitively than even an ESFJ. ESFJ's compassion is many times like locked in with the SI, which is like it's the better function for taking care of somebody's physical needs and understanding the physical needs than understanding the psychological needs of a person. Okay, you know that secondary SI. It's just like, you know, I have known a lot of ESFJs. I used to date an ESFJ, and there is something like, you know, like I dated this lady for 2.5 years, and yeah, she was the most compassionate person and really like made me feel understood and so on. But on the other hand, sometimes I felt like a little bit like misunderstood. So sometimes I kind of felt that the SI, which is kind of like, you know, limit the scope of the ESFJ's capability of understanding like super complex psychological matters and so on. You know, would they be S tier or A tier? I don't know. I like the ESFJ would probably be at the A tier, to be honest. You know, because that's just like, you know, understanding crazy people, that is super complex shit. You know, like I'd hate to say this, but I like with ESFJs, the crazier and the more complex it gets. I don't like ESFJs are the best of the best at like understanding people in some like deep, complex fashion. And I hate to say this, and I don't want to be a dick. Like, you know, I don't think like the ESFJs could get to the S tier. Like I like the A tier, and you got some talent for this shit. Okay, ESFJs would definitely be some of the most talented people at the psychiatric fields. If you're like an ESFJ interested about it, go for that shit. You know, but ESFJ at the end of the day, they tend to understand people through physical needs and preferences. You know, they like I like they that is the SI that kind of like, you know, drives them into like kind of like puts the focus of the compassion and the emotional intelligence into something like physical, which would be the best for being a nurse. But the psychiatric nurse, I don't think that like, you know, these guys are competing for the best of all time. You know, I like ESFJs would have like talent, like A tier is talented tier. You would have talent for it. You would be a super awesome psychiatric nurse, nowhere around it. But I it's like for the life of me, I couldn't give the ESFJ the S tier. I just couldn't give that shit. So yeah, ESFJ is A tier. What about the ESFP? I like ESFPs. Leading with SE, ESFPs are some of the greatest interactioners of the system. Like, and I forgot to say, like ESFJ is also great interactioners and pretty ESFJs are good like in even like in violent circumstances and so on. So yeah, but ESFPs, ESFPs leading with SE, like, you know, they can definitely handle like even, you know, violent circumstances. They can be the bouncer. They can interact with people like crazy. Secondary FI gives them the depths, you know, required. I have to say, I like ESFPs are deeper when it comes to understanding people's emotions than ESFJs. I like ESFPs do understand people in a more complex way. That's like FI is simply a deeper feeling function than FE. And although like FE is generally better, I would say that in this case, that FI actually gives the ESFP this like deeper capability of understanding crazy people. I just have to say that. Like I used to know an ESFP really closely, and that guy, I mean, like he would simply understand crazy people like pretty well, you know. It's the crazy thing to say, like ESFPs are seen as the kind of like, you know, party girl and party boy, and it's like many people perceive ESFPs as the most kind of like superficial, you know, party, you know, that there's like having fun and they don't give a shit about anything or anybody, and yeah, many times ESFPs can be kind of immature and selfish and everything, but when it comes to like, you know, like even with their friends, like ESFPs, man, like, I mean, they do care at the end of the day, and actually ESFPs do fucking understand people. Sometimes they're just like end up being dicks because they want to have fun in their daily lives, and And so on, but like if they would be at the psychiatric ward, like you would kind of like be getting like almost like the best of the ESFP. I like ESFPs have surprisingly deep, emotional, sensitivities to people, and even like and here's the thing, man. I always kind of feel that like FI is almost like the intuitive feeling function. Like FI is almost like as close as you could get to intuition without having intuition. I actually think like ESFPs tend to be super intuitive when it comes to people. That they're like super unintuitive when it comes to everything else. But people that is the place where an ESFP actually like, I have like I have known ESFPs. Not like many, but the like, every time that I have ever heard like an ESFP like give some like their take on the matter when it comes to a person or an emotion, and I'm always being like, what the fuck, like where is this coming from? Like, is this person like an INFJ or something? Like ESFPs are surprisingly fucking deep with their emotional analysis, yeah, man. Like I don't know, man. I like ESFPs, and ESFPs have this like weird way in even like, if they really have to or want to or need to, of like even like shutting down their extroversion. Like I like better than ENFPs, for example. Like, and ESFPs, they have that like hard grounded FI where they will notice if somebody's like doesn't need the extroversion right now, man. Like I don't know, man. Like I like an ESFP would be a fucking S tier. Like I'm surprised that I'm even saying this myself. But then when I think about all of the ESFPs that I know and I have known, and the guy that I knew who was one of my best friends back in the day, I mean, there's like no fucking like I'm surprised that I'm saying this. I'm talking about this. I thought that like ESFPs would be like A tier, but the more that I think about it, it's like I just can't have them at any other place except S tier, man. Like I am surprised by this myself, but the FI of the ESFPs like hard carries these guys. There's no way around it. I like ESFPs are the perfect example of just like how fucking powerful is FI when it comes to people and emotions. That's what it is. And wrestling being the bouncer, SETE, super alpha combo, But ESFPs have this weird capability of like not being an alpha like most of the time. Like ENTJs are kind of like, ENTJs almost like don't know how to like not being an alpha, but ESFPs, they're kind of like, joyful enough and this kind of like, bouncy enough that they don't come off as like alphas per se, but they do have that circumstance capability of like ESFPs can be an alpha when they need to be. Okay. Like I'm just gonna say this, like I like ESFPs would be S tier, man. So what about the ISFP? I mean, ISFPs, it's just like leading with FI, secondary SE, and tertiary NI is at that FI-NI combo. Once again, which would be even powerful for the ISFP than the INTJ, because ISFPs are leading with FI, so they don't have to like wonder like how developed their FI is. That secondary SE once again like makes ISFPs surprisingly robust. Like ISFPs, I always say like ISFPs are like the sensitive guy who's a tough motherfucker if they need to be. So like it's like ISFPs are simply like the 10 times deeper version of the ESFP, basically. So I mean, like everything that I just said about the ESFP applies to the ISFP in spades. Like ISFP sitting down with a guy, they also have that capability that the INFPs have, that like Dario Nardi like blue state where they can sit down with you and they have to say anything and they just give you the space and they can like sit there with you and accept you as a person. Like ISFPs accept human beings exactly as they are. That's the power of the FI. ISFPs have like probably after INFPs or at the same level the deepest and the greatest emotional intelligence of the whole system. There's no way around it. Like if an ESFP would understand crazy people like an ISFP, their understanding would be at the level of an INFP. Okay, I'm just gonna say this: ISFPs would be like an unquestionable S tier type, and I think they would be better than fucking everybody. Like I'm just gonna go and say I like ISFPs would be the best like sensor type for being a psychiatric nurse. For the psychiatric wards, I mean, like they would probably be even better than the INFP, to be honest. Because once again, like you're not like doing super deep psychotherapy for years, where I think the INFP would probably be better. Like you're just like you're living with crazy people, like you're hanging around with them and you're handling their daily lives and so on. And it's like ISFPs would be the penultimate, psychiatric nurse. That they would have the deep emotional intelligence and sensitivity to understand the person in question totally. They could be the bouncer when need be. Their extroverted sensing gives them like interactionary capabilities, and they would notice everything. Like I'm just saying, like I'm tempted to go like, well, I mean, the ISFP basically has no weakness for this shit like whatsoever. Start thinking about it. And once again, it is not like I like ISFPs. At the end of the day, they are sensors, but I don't know, man. Like some ISFPs, they have stronger NIs than SEs. But your average ISFP probably wouldn't be the deepest psychotherapist with the most complex understanding of the human psychology and so on. But for the purpose of psychiatric wards, the psychiatric field as a psychiatric nurse. That's still like so much like living with the guy, daily stuff that like, and because the ISFPs then also just fucking have the NF level of understanding people and emotions. Like I like ISFPs are kind of like the NF or the SFs, just like the ENFJ is kind of like the SF of the NFs, Like I'm just gonna fucking say this, man. It's just gonna have to go like this. I like the ISFP would be even better than the INFJ as a psychiatric nurse. There's just no way around it. ISFPs literally have no weakness for the job. Like INFJs, they do have that like hard to be an authority figure when people start beating each other and knifing each other up the ass. ISFPs have no problem with that kind of shit. So ISFPs, the same thing with ENFJs. They're the only type of the two guys who literally has no weakness for the job whatsoever. So I like that. Like ISFPs would be even above the INFJs. There's no way around it, man. So yeah, what about the ISFJ? Leading with SI, kind of like the worst, like worst function for the specific purpose of psychiatric wards. Compared to the other functions, as like TI. Secondary FE, yeah, super powerful and so on. But I like ISFJs are kind of like the similar. They're like the introvert version of an ESFJ, where like there's like better at like dealing with physical needs than purely psychological needs. I like the ISFJ, like the SIFE. It's just like you're taking care of people's needs and preferences and so on. The tertiary TI, maybe it gives you a little bit of intelligence when it comes to people, to be honest. Once again, like ISFJs are one of the rare types that could actually like capitalize on the TI when it comes to people. FE-TI combo, when it starts with the FE and the TI is working as a slave to the FE, yeah, you can actually get something, derive something out of the TI when it comes to the ISFJ. In some ways, I like ISFJs can sometimes be even like better in understanding people in the ESFJ, because they do get that like logical analysis about people as well, But the one thing, like inferior NE, and that is a bit problematic if you want to be a psychotherapist. You're not trying to be a psychotherapist, but I'm just saying, connecting the dots, seeing the patterns, and so on. That'd be like a little bit of a weakness. The reason why I would rate the ISFJ above the ESFJ is because they are, at the very end of the day, introverts. And being an introvert in this case would probably be better, for the purpose, because ISFJs, they're better at sitting down with a guy and it's like observing the person, letting them the space so that they could observe the person and then like get deeper understandings of the person in question. Like ESFJs, once again, like that FENE combo, it's a bit of a superficial combo, a little bit of a superficial. And so I like ISFJs would make for better psychiatric nurses than ESFJs. There wouldn't be a big difference, They would be basically at the same level. But once again, I couldn't give the ISFJ the S tier. They would be super talented once again. They would have talent for this shit, but they wouldn't be competing for the best of all time. Okay, so if you're interested about the field, just go for it like ISFJ guy or lady, you would be doing wonderful. A tier is like the talent tier. S tier is like you're competing for the best of all time, okay? So what about the STs? What about the ESTJ? I like ESTJs, very similar to ENTJs, leading with TE, TENE combo. Yeah, ESTJs can also interact with people. They have high social skills, but ESTJs, they just like have an inferior feeling function. And I just have to say, when it comes to like super complex, like mental shits, like ESTJs, like, I don't know, man. I like they maybe have even worse emotional intelligence than ENTJs, basically. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. On the other hand, like, ESTJs, they do... I like ESTJs, like, almost, like, accept people as who they are better than the ENTJ. ENTJs can be somehow a little bit elitistic. Like, I have seen ESTJ, people in the psychiatric fields. I think they do okay. And once again, that, like, alpha... bouncer shits. ESTJs can definitely be the authority, definitely keep up with the rules and principles and keep people in check and cut the shits and so on. Sometimes you need a guy who can just simply cut the shits with crazy people. And ESTJs are some of the best people in doing that. I like ENTJ. ESTJs are better at doing that than the ENTJ. ENTJs are going to be somehow a little bit too brutal. ESTJs can cut the shits in like a less brutal way somehow. I like ESTJs who are more grounded and so on. I would say that like overall, like I would have the ESTJ actually above the ENTJ. Like I'm just biased because I saw this like one ENTJ and the murderer kids love the guy. So like if I didn't have that experience, I would be putting the ESTJ above the ENTJ. But it's probably like super tight and impossible to determine. They basically have the same weakness of just like having inferior intuitive feeling, and you just like literally sometimes get people completely off and there's no way around it. That being said, once again, you have to be a psychotherapist, so I like ESTJs, which just make for okay, psychiatric nurses. I think that they could get the job done. And I like ESTJs would get along with crazy people wonderfully, and so on. So what about the ESTP? ESTP is leading with SE, secondary TI, you don't get much out of it. SE does give you the alpha male capability and interactionary capability. The SEFE combo, that is just a juicy combo with people. ESTPs get along with everybody. They can read people. They can interact with people. ESTPs are super talented people. Inferior NI, I kind of feel that when it comes to people, like, it's kind of the same thing with ESFPs. Like, ESTPs don't, like, have that much of a weakness about, like, not understanding people, somehow that, like, SEFE combo, once again, just, like, gives them the capability of, like, skipping the NI and understanding, like, people anyways. And I actually think like ESTP is also probably one of the types that can derive some benefit for understanding people, even from the TI. Now that being said, you would have to develop your FE to a great extent. I actually do that like ESTP probably understands super complex emotional stuff and crazy people better than an ESFJ, for example. I would even go as far as to say like maybe better than an ISFJ. Like, I'm hard-pressed to not put the ESTP to the S tier because they're just, like, insane people, guys. They're so talented with people. They're so talented with crazy people. I think that ESTPs, they just, like, have enough emotional intelligence, I like ESTPs would be super talented as like, psychiatric nurses. Either they would be below ESFPs. I know that ESFPs do have like more sensitivity about the people, but I'm like hard pressed to imagine anything that would be required of a psychiatric nurse that like an ESTP couldn't like be nailing that shit. You know, like you imagine these guys into any circumstance they would find in their daily jobs, and ESTPs, I mean, they would just be like really fucking good under all circumstance. So yeah, I'm gonna put the ESTP to the S tier as well, man. There's no way around it, okay? So what about the ISTPs? Leading with TI, the worst function in the system. SE, yeah, they can be alpha. Tertiary NI. In the case of the ISTP, you don't get that much out of the NI, man, because it's living under the servitude of TI and SE. So ISTPs have probably some of the lowest emotional intelligence in the whole system. They do have social skills, like that SE gives them interactionary capabilities and some social skills. And ISTPs, they're so grounded with reality, they're so good at just like cutting the flying shits out of everything. And ISTPs, they are introverts, they can like shut the fuck up. ISTPs are really talented in shutting the fuck up. And actually, like, it's a stupid thing, like ISTPs have no emotional intelligence whatsoever, but ISTPs are really good at just like being silent and giving you the space as well. I actually think like ISTPs have like some weird capabilities for the job. Yeah, they might not be able to understand people and the complexities of people and so on, but they're like being. Like ISTPs are the kind of a guy who doesn't understand anybody, but they would kind of like act and behave in the exact way that would be like really suitable, in my view, for the psychiatric wards. Because they do just shut the fuck up. I mean, that is like one of the greatest capabilities in the psychiatric field. Just like knowing how to sit down with a guy and not say fucking anything, man. Just don't fucking say shit. You know, ISTPs, and that like giving the other person the space. And accepting the other person as who they are. So ISTPs, they do have these two capabilities. And it's almost like they don't have emotional intelligence, but they're almost like acting, that they end up like behaving like in a way that a guy with high emotional intelligence would be behaving with crazy people. It's like, shut the fuck up and let the guy give his space and listen to him. I actually think like ISTPs would be better than ENTJs, better than ESTJs. I actually think like ISTPs would in some weird way almost like fit the picture at the psychiatric wards. Yeah, like I never saw like an ISTP psychiatric ward caretaker or a nurse, but I do like just imagining them there, like, you know, all the ISTPs that I have ever known, I have no fuck quantities of them because it's a pretty, you know, common type, especially for men. You know, they just like have these two things, like shutting the fuck up and giving the other person their space, and then that like accepting other people as who they are. And ISTP would never judge a crazy person. You know, I like it's a weird thing. I like ISTPs would make a feasible job. I think they're like the top of the B tier basically. So what about the ISTJ? SI, once again, not the greatest function for that shit. TE, okay, you can maybe handle some circumstances and so on. But that it is like a small benefit. Now the true magic for the ISTJ comes from the SI-FI combo. But that's kind of like, well, that's highly physical, you know, so on. I like ISTJs who have a super strong introverted feeling, you know, which you would have to have, and it would develop if you work in the fields. You know, some ISTJs can be super Asperger's, like some INTJs, but we're making the assumption here that you either have strong FI or you're going to develop that shit. So I like ISTJs. I mean, SI-FI does at the very least good enough of a job compared to ESFJs and ISFJs. There's no way around it, okay? Like, as a matter of fact, I just do think that the FI is such like a deeper function that in this case where like it's all wired with physical stuff. I like FI is the combo that lets you somehow transcend the physical shits. FE is such a superficial function for people and emotions, it almost requires like an intuitive function to become super deep. You know, even if in the case of the ENTPs, like NE still makes it so much more, your understanding about people so much more complex and deeper. That like FE-SI combo, that is just like, you know, like your FE is wired to SI. It's almost like you can't see people past the SI, man. But ISTJs, like I just have to say, man, like I have known a fuck quantity of ISTJ caretakers, not necessarily in the psychiatric field, but like in elderly care homes and that kind of stuff, where I also used to work as a caretaker. ISTJs who have strong FI, I mean, they have like almost like a magical sensitivity to people. And I just feel that they do have that like deeper emotional understanding. FI doesn't need another function to be super deep about people. Like, I don't know if you're going to think this is a crazy thing, but actually that like an ISTJ with strong SI would just be deeper than either one of these guys in understanding people as who they are and emotions as what they are, you know, like isolated from physical reality, you know. And that being said, ISTJs, I mean, they are hard craned to physical reality. They lead with SI. I don't like an ISTJ would be an S tier guy. But yeah, I like ISTJs would be like an A tier guy, and they would even have talent for that shit. But once again, that is only if you have like strong FI. This is like, you know, the question of like, are you at the bottom of the lists with normal levels of ISTJ FI, or are you at the top of the lists with high levels of FI? This is like ISTJ can be at anywhere here depending on, you know, their FI levels. But FI, you know, it simply hard carries people when it comes to the psychiatric fields, to be honest, you know. Yeah. So this is where I would put the guy, you know, debatable which what it is, or is it here or whatever. But, you know, strong FI, and I like the ISTJ would have like a really high talent for that shit. And that's it, guys. These are the lists. You know, as you can see, like intuition and feeling combined, it's just like a magical superpower for the psychiatric fields, for understanding people in all of their complexities and so on. But that being said, FI, you know, is a super powerful function for that shit. And ESTPs, you know, there's like people, maniacs, and so on. So this is what I would say is the list. The only type that I wouldn't like recommend to become like a psychiatric nurse would be INTP. Even if you're like an ISTP, even if you're an EST or ENTJ, I think you can get the job done, and so on. A tier guys, just go for it. You're talented for that shit. And these guys, nothing more to be said. Guys, this is the list. Check the other nursing specialties if you're wondering which kind of a specialty you want to choose for yourself as a nurse. I have made a lot of lists for this profession specifically, and see you around, guys, okay?